Hello and welcome to Chapter 12, where we will be discussing marketing channels or distribution channels and how they deliver value to customers. This is a very important topic that marketers have to consider, and it's part of the marketing mix, place, or distribution. So let's take a look at some of the things that are involved in marketing channels. Our first learning objective is to explain why companies use marketing channels and discuss the functions that these channels perform. But first, I want to talk about Uber and how Uber has changed the distribution system of the public transportation system forever. If you think about what was going on before Uber, we had buses and taxis, primarily in the public transportation system. So, what Uber did was look at a niche that was being underserved. And if you've ever ridden a bus or rode in a taxi, you know a couple things. One, buses are not readily available for you when you're ready to go somewhere. You basically adhere to their schedule. So the bus comes by at 12:20, you just have to be at the bus stop and hope that it comes by at 12:20 and picks you up. But if you wanted to leave at noon, you'd have to wait 20 minutes, or you may have to wait longer than that. Taxis are a little bit different because you call a taxi when you need one and you get picked up. However, taxis were and are limited in numbers. So, for instance, in the town of Morgantown, prior to Uber, the taxi system consisted of about 6 taxis. Not nearly enough to take care of the population of Monongalia County. So Uber saw this niche in the market. They basically created the ride share program that is known as Uber, where not only can you request a pickup, but you can actually get picked up quite quickly. And you can see on your phone where your ride is at and how soon it will be there. If you've ever rode or took an Uber or a Lyft, which is now its competition, you know exactly what I mean by the convenience that they bring to the market. And it's just another way that the channel of distribution for public transportation has changed. And it probably will change again at some point. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this chapter. We want to talk about the difference between upstream partners and downstream partners. What I'd like to talk about with the upstream partners. So every product, every service, before it's taken and being offered to the customer, it is either created from in some way, or it is, if it's a service, there's been training involved. Anything that happens above the product itself is an upstream partner. So let me give you an example and then I'll come back. When we're talking about Starbucks, who are the upstream versus the downstream partners? Well, the upstream partners are the coffee bean growers, those who pick the coffee beans and sort them, package them, and ship them to Starbucks. Those are known as upstream partners. Downstream partners include everyone in the marketing channel or the distribution channel that go towards the customer. These could be retailers or wholesalers, trucking companies, FedEx, UPS, the US Postal Service. There's a myriad of downstream partners involved with every product that we come in contact with. Let me give you an example. A Nike athletic shoe. Who are the downstream partners? Well, they could be the shipping people who take the boxes of the pairs of athletic shoes and ship them directly to the sporting goods stores or the department stores. They may actually take them to a wholesaler who then resells them to other retailers. It's different for every product, but I think you get the gist. Downstream partners point towards the customer. Upstream partners, they point towards the manufacturer, and they help in the manufacturing of the product itself. So there is a difference between upstream and downstream partners. Know the difference of those. When we're talking about supply chains, we're talking about everyone and every company that's involved in the production and the delivery of a product. It can come from the producers of raw materials to the people who make the machines that make the product and that the company buys or leases in order to produce the products. It could be the landlords of the factories, the stores, everyone that's involved. And it includes all of those individuals and people and companies and materials. Some people might call this the demand change, or I'm sorry, the demand chain, where basically stating that once a customer needs or demands a product, there's a response, and it sets off this chain of reactions from companies who start planning to produce and deliver the product to the customer. We'll talk about this later as we go through. You'll see the examples. So today we talk about this chain, supply chain, this demand chain, and we really think of it as a value delivery network. In other words, this network of people, network of companies that actually deliver the total value of the product. They help produce it, they help deliver it, and so forth. So it's composed of all these different companies and suppliers that basically help bring the product to market. What are some of the things that this supply chain or this value delivery network, what are some of the things that they might actually provide other than the raw materials or the delivery? Well, they might provide information that the company can use for their benefit. Marketing data. They can help tell the company maybe who their competition is or how their competition is doing something better. They can help promote the product. A lot of times you will see distributors of beer or colas who are actually putting up promotional material for the company, hoping to sell more product. They can help to negotiate. In other words, sometimes they may negotiate a price for the company to the wholesaler or the retailer. They bring a lot of things to the table, just other than physical distribution of the product. They help finance the product as it goes through the channel. They take some risk for the companies. As let's say you were a distributor of a product, let's say Coca-Cola, and you basically are taking on warehouses and warehouses full of Coca-Cola products. Well, this is taking on risk because you are purchasing that from Coca-Cola. They are selling it and making the profit before you've ever sold it. So you're actually, that company or that warehouse or that distributor is actually taking on some risk. What does this distribution channel look like? Well, every company has one or two or three even different types of distribution channels. Here are some three examples of some very simple distribution channels where we see the producer in the first one selling to a wholesaler who sells to a retailer who then sells to the consumer. So you have multi members in this channel, as do the second one, where the producer goes directly to the retailer and then to a consumer. And then we have direct to consumer, where there's basically no intermediaries in between. You go from producer to consumer. Now, there may be some market channel intermediaries in here, like FedEx or UPS for delivery, but there may not be. Maybe the producer makes the product and delivers it directly to the consumer. These channel members add value by bridging the gap between the goods and the users. They bridge the time gap, the place gap, and the possession gap. In other words, if I want a product that's being manufactured in Detroit, well, if there were no intermediaries and there was no marketing channel, I may have to drive to Detroit to get the product. That would take me time. It would also be a very inconvenient way because of the place that's involved. To be a very inconvenient way to get the product because I'm going to have to take time, I'm going to have to drive and go pick it up. So all this time, place, and possession would all be inconveniences for me without any type of marketing channel that could actually directly deliver it to me. Take a look. Here are on the left 3 manufacturers that deliver directly to the customer. And each manufacturer has 3 different customers. Look at all the different ways that all the different methods of transportation that have to be used for each customer. Now take a look at the second example on the right, where we have a number of contacts with a distributor. Each manufacturer ships to the distributor. The distributor then ships to each customer. It's a much more simplified and inexpensive way to get the product to the customer. So you can see the importance of the marketing channel just by this graphic. I talked a minute ago about the value that marketing channel members bring to not only the company but to the consumer. I talked about the information that they could offer, the promotional type of materials that they may help out with, negotiation, physical distribution, obviously, financing, risk taking. So we talked about those and how, so you can see where the members of the marketing channel that help the producer get the products to the consumer have a lot of value. So there's a number of channel levels. Okay, so a channel level is every layer that's involved in the marketing channel. And I'll talk about that in a minute. There's a direct marketing channel that basically is, as I mentioned earlier, there are no intermediaries involved. And then there's an indirect marketing channel where there's one or more intermediaries involved. So take a look here. On the left-hand side, you have the consumer marketing channels. Here we have a direct channel, producer to consumer. Here we have multi-levels. There's more intermediaries involved. In the second one, there is a retailer involved. In the third one, there's a wholesaler and a retailer. So you can see where these are indirect marketing channels. These two are indirect. This one is a direct marketing channel. If we take a look at the business marketing channel, so this is business to business, okay? Maybe Staples selling to Fairmont State, or even better yet, maybe a machine manufacturer selling to a factory who uses that machine to produce something. Here we have a producer directly to the business. We have a direct channel. Here we have our indirect channel. We have distributors involved here. We also have people who go out and sell for the manufacturer, manufacturer's representatives. So direct, indirect. Direct on the left-hand side next to indirect channels. There's several flows involved in these channels. There's obviously a physical flow of products that go from the producer to the consumer via either directly or indirectly through wholesalers, retailers, FedEx, UPS, whatever. There's often a flow of ownership, especially on the wholesaler level. Wholesalers actually will purchase products from the producer and in turn resell those to retailers. So wholesalers and retailers take ownership of the products before the consumer ever purchases them. So you have a flow of ownership. You have a payment flow that goes back and forth from the consumer to the retailer, from the retailer to the wholesaler, from the wholesaler to the producer. There's an information flow telling about the product. There's a promotion flow. So you can see where there's different types of flows involved in all these channel members. And it's a very important thing to remember because these channel members help marketers, help companies sell their products. Next, we're going to discuss how channel members interact and how they organize to perform the work of the channel. And we've already talked a lot about this. But because there are different individuals, different companies involved in the marketing channel, we basically are trying to make sure that each member plays a role in a positive way and that those people partner for the common good of every member. We want the retailers who buy from wholesalers. The retailer is basically blind to the producer. If you take a look at this on the left, a consumer who buys from a retailer has no contact with the wholesaler or the producer. Same way that a retailer has no contact with the producer. They are basically, their upstream partner is the wholesaler. Okay, so keeping that in mind, the behaviors of each member of the channel is critical. If we have a bad wholesaler, then the retailers are going to be affected, as are the consumers. The producer may not even realize this. They're so far away from the consumer and the retailer that they may not know that the people that they are selling their products to get to the retailer and consumer are not working the way that they should. So there's a channel behavior involved. If you take a look here, it just shows an example of what I've just talked about, where you have these wholesalers and retailers involved in the marketing channel. How they behave and how well they work is going to benefit everyone in the channel. Let's take a look at these vertical marketing systems that we just took a look at. The one on the left is called a conventional marketing channel. Now, both of them are vertical, but I want you to know the difference between a conventional marketing channel and a vertical marketing system. So here, the one on the left, where you have the producer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer, that's a conventional marketing channel, where ownership is transferred from one level intermediary to the next. And then you have the vertical marketing system, which is on the right-hand side. So the vertical marketing system basically provides channel leadership and it's consistent with producers, wholesalers, and they all act in a unified system. I'm going to show you an example here in a minute. But they're different from the conventional system where basically each one of those levels is seeking profit on their own. They're all taking ownership of the product and trying to make profit. The wholesaler buys it from the producer, trying to make profit as they sell it to the retailer. Retailer takes ownership of the product from the wholesaler, tries to make profit as they sell it to the consumer. So you can see that there's different profit seekers in the conventional marketing channel. But in the vertical marketing system, it's a little bit different. It acts as a unified system. So let me show you a really good example of what I mean. General Motors is part of a corporate vertical marketing system where there's successive stages of production and distribution under single ownership. Now, there are dealerships that do take some risk, but the idea of the automobile itself, the design, the assembly, the production of it is all done through GM. The distribution is done through contractors that bring it to the dealerships themselves. And GM controls all phases of this. They control how the product is priced at the dealership level, how it is serviced. And so it makes the system more unified, and therefore it's a lot more transparent to the customer or consumer themselves. There's contractual vertical marketing systems that basically where there's independent firms involved with production and distribution, and they join together through contracts. Don't worry too much about that. But even in the previous example, there's a little bit of that going on because General Motors will contract with a carrier to take the products from their Detroit assembly lines and deliver them to various locations throughout the United States to their independent dealerships. There's franchise organizations where basically these are franchisees who purchase the right to sell or service from a franchisor. And there's tons of examples here because we all know that franchises are very evident and numerous across the country. But the franchisor, because it's a franchise organization, the franchisor basically helps link the stages of production and distribution throughout. So I'll give you an example. Subway. Subway they are a franchisor who helps their franchisees, independent franchisees, all the locations across the United States. They deliver the goods, the meats, all the condiments, the bread, and they help them with their locations and so forth. So there's several stages between the production and distribution process in which the franchisor actually helps the franchisee. Next is the administered vertical marketing system. And I'm trying to think of a really good example of this. Well, one would be the horizontal marketing system that you might have. Now, keeping in mind, vertical going up and down, horizontal going east to west or across. This is where you have two or more companies who basically partner together to try to capture some type of market opportunity that's out there. Let me give you an example. If we're talking about airlines, although you may not be familiar with the one that's pictured here, let me talk to you about one that you could be actually familiar with. Clarksburg Airport, Clarksburg Regional Airport, or North Central West Virginia Regional Airport, has several carriers that go out of their airport. It's a relatively small airport, although they do have one runway that can actually take care of the takeoff and landing of a large jumbo jet. But I digress. The birds mess me up. I don't know if you hear them in the background. But anyway, out of the Clarksburg Regional Airport or North Central Regional Airport, you have several smaller carriers who take passengers to larger airports such as Washington, D.C., or to Baltimore. And they're in contract with larger airlines because the larger airlines don't want to come to Clarksburg. They want the passengers, but they can't afford to bring a larger jet in there to fly them out. So they will actually contract with these smaller companies, smaller airline companies, to bring the passengers to them at the larger airports. And that's a really good example of a horizontal marketing system. Multi-channel distribution systems, we've sort of talked about that earlier, but where we've seen different levels. But multi-channel distribution system is where one company actually uses or utilizes different types of marketing channels. The producer might sell directly to the consumer. I might use Nike as an example here, where Nike sells directly to consumers, maybe through their website. They may sell directly to large retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods, or they may sell to distributors who will sell to smaller dealers like small shoe stores. They may also have a sales force that sells, although I don't know if they do or not, but they may have a sales force that sells to companies. Maybe they sell work shoes to Amazon, and they may have a sales force that goes directly to that business segment. But the point being, even though that could be totally theoretical, that is a multi-channel distribution system. They are utilizing different channels to get their product to the end user. And it's a very, very effective way for a large company to operate their distribution. I think I'll talk about this. Now, disintermediation is the cutting out of a marketing channel. So let me give you an example. Let's just use the example that's on the screen, Spotify. Many of you probably use that. I don't happen to use Spotify, but a lot of you are probably familiar with what Spotify does. And they have streamed audio music, and it has basically cut out the middle people in the channel, the music store retailers. So their business has been hurt significantly because of the disintermediation of this new company, if that makes sense. So it's the cutting out of a marketing channel intermediary by producers or the displacement of traditional resellers by new intermediaries. Spotify is obviously an intermediary, but because they now exist, a lot of traditional smaller music stores do not exist because they went out of business because people stream their music instead of buying a CD. Objective 3, identify the major channel alternatives open to a company. And we've talked a lot about them, but when a company is designing their marketing channel, they have to take into account the customer's needs. Where do they want the product? When do they want it? How do they want to purchase it? They have to set channel objectives. They have to identify alternatives. And they have to evaluate those alternatives. Think about what we're going through right now with the coronavirus. I can guarantee you that companies who manufacture face masks are sitting back and evaluating their channel design. They're evaluating the alternatives because what we have found out is that when there is a rush that is caused by a pandemic, everything sells out immediately, and it takes forever to get those items back in stock. And those companies that manufacture those masks are actually losing business because their marketing channel was not strong enough to cope with the extraordinary demand of their product. And now we have people who are making these at home. We have other companies who are making them part-time so that there's enough of these out there. And the companies, the original manufacturers, are losing business. Their marketing channels and their supply failed. Now, obviously, it was a very extreme condition, but nevertheless, it probably has affected them forever. Because now what customers will do is they may look for alternative sources for these masks. They may make them themselves. So it's very important as companies design channels that they design them to make sure that they can handle the business at hand. So analyzing the consumer's needs, setting those channel objectives, identifying channel alternatives, and evaluating those channel alternatives. I'll give you another really good example that has come out of this coronavirus pandemic, and that is the supply of toilet paper. Even though there is ample supply of toilet paper in the warehouses that these manufacturers have, they have a problem getting the goods, the toilet paper, to the stores to meet the demand. That's why you see empty shelves. There's no shortage of toilet paper. There is a breakdown in the distribution channel because the demand is so high. And because that demand is so high, the producers cannot keep up the shipping of this product. So don't be surprised if they look at other ways. After this pandemic, they may set up warehouses closer to their customers. They may increase the number of warehouses across the country. They may increase the number of trucking companies that ship it. There's lots of things that they might do once they evaluate this process and the breakdown in this process. So analyzing the consumer needs, obviously identifying the market segments that want the product, and what are the best channels to serve those markets. Obviously, we want to minimize the cost of meeting these customer service requirements because we want to make as much profit as we can, and we still have to keep the price at a level that consumers will buy the product. So finding out what target consumers want from the channel is important. Maybe some customers want to buy directly from the company online. Maybe there's a segment of customers who want to buy only from a certain store. And that's why a lot of these companies will have multi-channels set up. Setting the channel objectives. What's the customer service level that the customer wants? What are they looking for? And balancing the consumer needs against the cost and the price that has to be set. Identifying major alternatives. What are the different types of intermediaries that can be used? Can we use FedEx to deliver directly from the factory to the consumer? Do we have to use warehouses or wholesalers or retailers? When we're taking a look at this, we have to think about what type of distribution matches our product. If we took a look at chewing gum, what do they have? Do they have an intensive distribution, exclusive distribution, selective distribution? I'll describe those in a minute, but which one do you think they have? If you thought they had intensive distribution, you would be right. You can buy Big Red chewing gum just about everywhere. They distribute to so many different retailers that, I couldn't even name them all. Obviously, they don't have exclusive distribution because people aren't going to take the time to go out and find where they can find Big Red gum. They'll just buy probably another juicy fruit, perhaps. And it wouldn't make sense to have selective distribution. It wouldn't make sense to have only one retailer in a city that sells Big Red. That just makes absolutely no sense at all. It's a very low-priced item. It's a convenience item, right? Remember convenience items? So identifying price policies, territory rights, there's all sorts of things that go into identifying these alternatives. We want to know what these responsibilities are going to be for each channel member. Are they going to buy? Are they only going to be an intermediary that doesn't take ownership? So all of these things are important to remember. Economic, control, adaptability, as we're evaluating these alternatives. What suits us best and maximizes customer service and suits the customer. It may not make sense to sell directly from the producer. It may make sense to first go to a retailer because that's where people look for the product. And channel systems are different from country to country, from product to product. If you took a look at in Asian and African cities, the graphic on the right shows that Kentucky Fried Chicken is delivered, although we know now you can get delivery everywhere to any company whatsoever. Sorry for the phone interruption. But as you can see, uh, every country has their own type of delivery strategy. And it has a lot to do with the consumer and how they expect these things to be delivered to them through the channel. Um, Real quickly, selecting channel members, managing them, motivating them, and evaluating channel members is important as we decide what type of channel distribution system to go with. I talked earlier about exclusive distribution, and that's when the producer basically only gives their products to a limited number of dealers who may have an exclusive right to distribute the product or sell the product in the territories. Rolex watches is exclusive distribution. Rolex watches is also exclusive dealing. It's when the sellers require uh, that the distribution sellers don't handle direct competitors. So you might go to a jewelry store that has Rolex, but they don't have another type of timepiece. There's exclusive territorial agreements where the territory is limited. So a jewelry store that sells Rolex watches in Morgantown maybe can only claim the territory in north central West Virginia. So there's exclusive distribution, exclusive dealing, exclusive territory agreements. All of this is part of the decisions that are made when selecting the right channel of distribution. Discuss the learning objective 5, discuss the nature and importance of marketing logistics and integrated supply chain management real quickly. Marketing logistics is just the physical distribution of a product, however you get it there. If you took a look at foreign car makers like BMW, or if you even took a look at domestic car makers like General Motors, they distribute their products not only domestically but internationally. Now, a lot of them have manufacturing sites overseas, but a lot of them don't. A lot of times they will ship in these big cargo ships their products, but the physical flow of the goods from point to point, that's logistics. It's a big job opportunity in logistics. You might think about logistics as a potential career, but it's obviously the physical distribution of products, marketing, logistics. If we took a look at, how that happens, there's from suppliers to the company themselves, maybe parts or raw materials. Then once it's produced to the resellers and to the consumers, that's pretty simple. Um, Supply chain management just specifically means managing the upstream and downstream partners, making sure that uh, everything is being met to specs and that the requirements are being met by each partner in that upstream or downstream flow. Warehousing, inventory management, transportation, information management, all of these are logistical functions that happen and are part of logistics. Who's where and can you can imagine a large company that produces hundreds of products, how intricate this is and how complex this is. um, I don't think there's anything you need to know there. And that is the end. That was a long one, wasn't it? I kept you almost as long there as I do in class. I hope everything is going well at this point. I hope you're finding flowing through this material simple. If you have any concerns or questions, please don't hesitate to either email me at james.davis@fairmontstate.edu or simply by course messaging me through the course. If any of you have questions about classes that you want to register for in the fall, I'd be happy to entertain those questions. I would like you to email me with those questions since it's not specifically this course you're talking about. But if you have questions about the marketing classes that you might want to take next, please don't hesitate to email me. And if there's anything else during this time that we're away from each other, please let me know. Reach out. I'd be happy to help. for now. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.